Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people of society? And I have made it on my own in this world. Will not take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, 'cause I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome to episode 46, can you believe it, of Political Unmuted. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Just before we start, I was contacted by somebody who sent me a lovely message and said, are you going to continue with your podcast? That's a really interesting statement. The first one is, of course, yes, this is a live show, but we do go out on podcast afterwards and on many other platforms. And we are really watched all over the world. There's literally hundreds of people watch us all over the world. So if you're one of those people, welcome. Thank you very much indeed. And the person who said how interesting, he didn't agree with our politics at all, but he found it interesting listening to this wonderful team. And the second thing is to point out that it's not my podcast. It's not my show at all. I just ask the questions. It's a socialist think tank event, and I'm proud to be able to stand in the place of chair. And okay, yes, I think we move on. Welcome to you all, and somebody congratulating Paul on his scarf. Before we start, moment of the week. Paul, what's the scarf?
It's a keffiyeh. It's from one of the. It's the only Palestinian factory that hasn't been bombed. Well, it might have been bombed by now, but this is a genuine Palestinian kafir. We've got a little bit going on there. Solidarity with the Palestinian people. I'm absolutely sickened by what the Israeli government is doing to them. Once again, it's a theme. It keeps happening. There are no, like, you know, I don't know whether anyone else is going to talk about this at any stage, but people keep on talking about it as a conflict. If it is a conflict, then one side's taking a knife to a gunfight, and they're not doing anything. You know, so you know, I can't believe the narrative around this where everyone's all, oh, but you must condemn this and you must condemn that. Yeah. It's an awful situation. So solidarity with the Palestinian people who do have a right to exist.
Thank you very much. Was that your moment of the week?
No.
Right, what's your moment of the week, Paul?
My moment of the week is I am very proud to become chair of Wingate Parish Council. It's probably one of those thankless roles, and you know, we have had a lot of problems in Wingate with people doing things to people on the council, so it's not taken lightly. But John Cairns had proposed me in that role before. I'm really proud to be able to fulfil that last proposal he did, if a little late. So John Cairns died last year from COVID. So yeah, I'm thinking of him all the way in this year in charge, and I just want to make sure the people of Wingate get a really, really good deal and get represented, and that's what it's all about for me. So.
Hiya, Heather. Lovely to see you've joined us. Next moment of the week, I think it's gloat time. Samantha, what was your moment of the week?
I can't think what you might be referring to, John. Might it be that I got elected to Durham County Council in what seems to be a lot more difficult circumstances than I had imagined? There are now 5 Labour councillors in the whole of my constituency, and 3 of them are in my branch. So I'm feeling really proud of, we did put the work in. Matt only won his seat by less than 50 votes, and so, you know, he definitely wouldn't have won that if we hadn't put the campaign work in and the time. And the lad that would have won it would have been a university student from Durham who not only visibly did not want to win, but joked about not wanting to win on Twitter afterwards in an absolute insult to the people of Shildon and Dean Valley who voted for him in their hundreds. So yes, we are very pleased in our branch, and you know, the work starts here.
I'm going to be very interested in what you have to say when we talk about, because the big story here, people, is the local elections and the defeat of Labour at DCCC, and Shildon really bucked the trend. Sort of something they've been eating something in Shildon that the rest of the population haven't, or something. It'd be very interesting to know your thoughts. Stuart, moment of the week for you.
Oh, this one's dead easy. Tricky Dicky Richard Holden is being slapped with a fine of £100 for littering after what seems like a year of him getting pictures out litter picking and standing next to a womble. He literally has zero consideration, and he just does it for the photos. And chuffed to say that actually somebody's caught him, you know, doing what I'm assuming he does every day, and that is just being a litter bug.
It was absolutely, of course, a Labour trick, was that, because Labour appointed the extra wardens last year, and it was one of those fine gentlemen that caught him. I do think it's worthwhile that we spent some time when we talked about the local elections, talking about the role of the Tory MPs in those elections, because it was much more aggressive than we've ever seen from MPs, and I'd be interested to see what you've got to say about that. Sort of my moment of the week, people. I have three. I'm going to tell you them very quickly. First of all, on Sunday I had my second injection. So if I realise I'm quite excited at the moment, but if I begin to flag towards the end, I am slightly under the weather still from it. The second thing is, you'll notice you can see me now. This is definitely not necessarily a bonus, but sort of I had my haircut this morning. I feel great. And then thirdly, I lost the election on Thursday. On Friday I found out, which was a downer for me. Those are my moments of the week. Laura, moment of the week.
Yeah, so my moment of the week kind of goes back to what Paul was talking about. The ambassador, the head of the Palestinian mission to the UK, and I apologise if I pronounce his name wrong, it's Hussam Zomalot, was on Newsnight the other night, and he delivered a fantastic interview, much to the annoyance of Emily Maitlis, who all she wanted to do was get him to criticise the Israeli government, criticise the Palestinians and support the Israeli government, and it was just she wouldn't let him speak, and he was very much sort of saying, no, actually, like this is horrendous, this has been coming for a while. And it was just the way he stayed calm and got his point across and talked about the situation in a way that nobody else is talking about and nobody else is allowed to talk about, especially on the BBC. It was just brilliant, and an interview that I think everybody needs to watch. And so I have posted that on my wall, and I'm going to post it on our social think tank page as well, because everybody needs to see it and understand the argument as it is told by somebody who's living it, not somebody who is told what to say. So yeah,
thank you.
That was my moment of the week.
Thank you for being so serious and on such an important issue. My heart just aches when you see those all the footage biased though it is. Could you explain the phrase, Laura, piss on my chips? What does this mean?
Well, Paul often goes on a bit of a rant. When he started talking about Palestine, I thought he was going to talk about that interview and then take away my moment of the week. Hence,
Okay.
on my
No
chips.
No need to say any more. It's just sort of there's a minor domestic going on. God bless you all. Love your moments of the week. We've rattled through people because we have such a big thing to talk about.
Now it's time for the big story.
And my golly, what a story it is. County Durham Labour loses control after Durham County Council after a century. Some really big names and some established icons falling. The leader steps down. There's sort of and then reverberations not only in the county but at Labour Party level. There's just so much to talk about. I've been very strict with the team. If they go over 2 minutes, I will just interrupt them and move to somebody else. They've been told they have to be within 2 minutes because we've got so many aspects to talk about. But let's kick first to the successful candidate and in the county council elections and sort of, I mean, looking at the picture overall, Sam, what was your take on it?
So, I mean, what we've got here is the power of incumbency. In the Tees Valley, Ben Houchin was the incumbent, and he's very good at the old press release. He's got a lot of people in his press team, and he's very controlling of his image. It was mentioned in the comments then, I mentioned it in the last week. I did work on Jesse's campaign, and he just would not appear. It wouldn't appear at hustings. It was very controlled over his image and what he's doing. Over on our side, what we had is lots of people who may have been Tory at heart, who for years have believed that a Tory vote is a wasted vote, who now have Tory MPs. So they know a Tory vote isn't a wasted vote anymore. And what they would have done in the past, not voting for Tory, voting strategically, is split their own vote between the Lib Dems and the independents or whatever other kinds of independents there might be locally. What we found, because we did a lot of door knocking in the very short period of time that we had, is that the Labour vote did hold up our Labour vote was still there, but the opposition vote coalesced around the Tories, and that is what's given them that push, because they're no longer splitting their own vote. I think that's what's happened at the county.
Thank you. Funnily enough, I was just saying this to my wife Barbara today, that my vote held up. I got 850 in 2017, 825 this time. I'm talking broad terms, more or less. But it was. I think you're absolutely right. In the past, there was no point in voting Tory because everybody thought it's a Labour shoe-in. What's the point of turning out? And there was a massive increase in turnout as well. And it wasn't that I got any less, it was that the Tories got and the Lib Dem got so much more. Paul, have you any, why? Have you any ideas, any thoughts about why this massive change happened?
Loads. Okay, so there was some really bizarre claims that people have taken in, like reducing council tax and keeping services the way they are. So there's that element of it. There's the kick the Labour council. I actually think, take some blame yourselves, Labour, ourselves, I suppose, in that we haven't engaged with the community enough. We haven't had those conversations. Actually, what we're finding, our vote really, really held up in Wingate, actually increased in Wingate. And the anti-Tory vote the anti-Labour vote seems to be exactly the same. So last time we had a Lib Dem that got 200 and something votes. This time those 200 and something votes were split between Conservatives and Lib Dems, and Lib Dem only got 45. So we have, I think, we've engaged here. We've been very, very prominent in the community. But so were you, John, and you lost your seat. So we weren't under such a concerted attack. We've certainly held up in the east of the region a lot better. So East Durham, the traditional coal mining communities who still hate Thatcher, who there's that element of it as well that's kept certain things Labour. But I think what has happened is it's been a massive culmination of all sorts of negative things. The Labour Party have slagged itself off for 5 years straight. Now, if you were going round, and I've said this a few times to people, if you were working for IBM and you said, hey, our CEO's crap, don't buy an IBM because our CEO's crap. Even the people who work for IBM are saying the CEO's crap, don't buy IBMs. And then, we've got a new CEO, start buying IBMs. People are like, no, I'm not going to do that. So that is where we are with the Corbyn kicking. I think it's a really stupid strategy. Although people are Starmer kicking at the moment, and Starmer has now proved himself to be less popular than Jeremy Corbyn in the latest popularity ratings. So nationally, so Starmer's really doing a very poor job as well, and no one's made up lies about him in the press. So it is what it is. The only thing we can do is start work, keep working. I'd also like to say that the Labour Party are not the only party with socialists in it. There are other socialists elected to Durham County Council. I really hope those people stand up for those principles, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll fight for that, and I'm sure they'll think, well, if Labour are proposing socialist things, then we'll go along with that, and that'd be really good. So congratulations to everyone who has got elected. And a lot of people have done that through fair means. Other people didn't, and they lied. But, that's politics, isn't it?
Stuart, people are asking on the chat scene, who's to blame? Is anybody to blame? Well, what's your view on it all?
It's not something you stick blame on. There's a lot going on. Even, you look across Sedgefield as just one constituency, and there's so much going on with culture, heritage, your voter base, the things going on in the town, the type of work that's going on in these towns and villages. All those things kind of change the voting demographic, and depending on who gets, a step up there, it really, comes down to the environment rather than, anybody being to blame personally.
I've got somebody here saying the changing all the time. Joe McVie, DLI Museum Teaching Assistants, New HQ. And then he says that the comms team need a shake-up. So I'm not sure whether that is saying those things were dreadful, they deserve to go, or whether DCC just messed up the messaging on that. I mean, what kind of? I mean, there's three key things there: DLI, teaching assistants, that happened in 2015, and the new HQ, which is certainly in the last couple of years. Sort of. I mean, do you think those things had an impact? Those specific incidents, as against the more general trends and movements and culture changes that you were talking about in your last answer?
Yeah, I mean, not as full concepts and ideas like the whole teaching assistants pay situation or the DLI. The whole situation around those is probably not taken into account by most voters. But it's very easy to stick it, on social media, in the papers, that these things are taken away. The teaching assistants got a rough going at. These are things that people can look at very quickly, and you go, yeah, that was wrong, without getting into the details of it. And I think that sways people quite easily.
Craig Fallow, new builds around Woodham and Aycliffe North. I read a very interesting article which said that home ownership and voting patterns are closely linked, and where home ownership goes over 65% in a ward, it's almost all those wards are Conservative. Where home ownership is below 50% in a ward, almost all those wards are not Conservative. And in between 50 and 65, there's this kind of battleground. Sort of, it's very interesting, the things that made people angry against the underlying trends and voter turnout. Really interesting. Lib Dems, Laura. I've got some things coming up about the Lib Dems. Now, this was their election, but in fact, they only got 3 extra places, and 2 of those was in Newton Aycliffe. I mean, what's your and if you're commenting on the chat, please let's have your ideas as well, people, because the Lib Dems really failed to deliver, except in Aycliffe, and your thoughts on that would be really helpful. But Laura, what are your thoughts on that?
I think this election is really taken a lot from the national picture. And I think the Lib Dems on a national level aren't doing a lot. We haven't seen them do anything. They're not, waving the flags they normally do. They haven't been quite as loud. And I think also that has been, the national picture is something that's certainly damaged the Labour people as well, who unfortunately didn't get elected or lost their seats. I completely agree with what Paul was saying. If you trash your brand for 5 years, you can't just suddenly turn that around and go, hey, but we're great now. And also I think, just not people feeling like they're not being listened to, parties not really seeming like they have any direction or any policies or anything they're particularly bothered about. I've not seen anything from the Lib Dems. Now, that could be because I'm not interested in the Lib Dems and haven't paid attention, but I haven't seen anything come out. And also, the Labour Party haven't particularly, well, they don't have any policies. And yeah, there's an argument you wouldn't expect them to yet, because there isn't another election for like 4 years. But you need to come out strong against stupid votes that you don't abstain on people's lives, and you don't agree with the government who's just failing people in a national, international pandemic. You don't go, well, we support the government. If you do that, you're not offering anybody anything different. So, what we have is, if we and other parties are saying, oh, we support the government, then people think, oh, well, the government are doing a good job then. Right, I'll vote for the Tories. Or they go, oh, God, they're all the same. I might as well stick with what I've got. So there's no alternative there. And I think the national picture has damaged people locally, and people don't have time to look into all the nitty-gritty, like the DLI museum, the teaching assistants. I get what Joe's saying there about the explanation behind those decisions perhaps wasn't made as public as it could have been, or and they've been used as a stick to beat us with, essentially. So yeah, and I don't think those are the only reasons. I think it's really complex. I think there are a lot of reasons. Of course, Brexit is a part of that. It has to be, because people are still talking about it, and the Brexit election was the Tory election. So yeah, it's really, really complicated, really complex. I don't.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've gone over me 2 minutes.
No, really good. And I could have listened all night. God bless, thank you. But I did promise everybody I would be very strict. There's two things I want to go on to. First of all, I just want to say the very lively debate on the chat is just wonderful to see. And thank you for your restraint and the polite manner in which that appears to be taking place. That is most welcome. There's two issues what I'd like to chase, and so these came from lower down. I'm going to have to ignore what's happening on chat for a little while. Let's take what Laura raised. Samantha, Brexit, even Lavery, when asked what was going on, he said Brexit, and they said, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" He said Brexit. Do you really think that Brexit was an issue in our local County Durham Council elections?
As somebody who stood in an election in 2019 and have done it in 2021, I can tell you it's not come up on the doorstep, Brexit, but that doesn't mean that it's not an issue in the sense that Brexit was a symptom of a problem, and the problem is still there. And the problem is people feel disconnected. They feel like they're being taken advantage of. They feel like they've got no control over their lives and their environment. So those problems still exist, and they're definitely still affecting our electoral success.
Thank you. That's spot on, Sam. I agree with you on that. And Paul, the other issue I want to raise, and I can't remember the person who raised it. Apologies to that person. But somebody was saying Labour needed to push the Green New Deal. Now, I don't know whether that's the case, because I'm was the climate champion. Stuart Dunn, who proposed the climate emergency motion, he went. Alison Hiles, who stood in the north of the county and is a climate expert, she failed to get in as well. If anything, there was a rejection of climate change and the Green New Deal, and sort of a concentration on much, I would say, smaller issues, potholes, dog dirt, sort of litter. Do you think that, Paul, this was the election that missed the big issues, Green New Deal, Green New Jobs, for a much more myopic view of what a council ought to be doing for its people? Or have I got that wrong, Paul?
Yeah, I think people weren't focusing on the important issues, actually. So, like, climate change is important to all of us. However, people will say things like, "Oh, well, but that doesn't affect me directly." Now, well, it will actually. It seriously will. Even if that's just like climate change in different areas of the world, meaning that you'll get more migration to better more climates that can generate more food and all those things. So it is an issue for everyone, even if your biggest issue is immigration, for example, which some people talk about. And I think sometimes, like, we do talk about the big issues as socialists and as the Labour Party. We do see that big picture. But people will also want to. Michael Murphy referred to, like, the down to earth idea of a Labour Party person who'll just be there working for their town, working for their village, working for whatever, people who are prominent in the community. And I think there's that as well, but I don't really see that as a full justification to vote Tory, because they've voted for people who don't even live here. So I think there's a double standard going on. I wrote a post about this on Facebook the other day. There should be a double standard, because people should hold Labour to a higher standard, because we are saying we're doing this for the working class people. And as soon as we don't do that, we deserve to get hammered for that. However, the solution is not to vote for the people who will do that to the nth degree. So it's a really mixed up, complicated situation. There's the media to deal with as well, who are very much like Tory fanboys, and they are like, I don't whinge about that, because there's nothing we can do about that other than media channels like this, other than like trying to share these opinions and say we are reasonable people. But the big issues are going to get drowned out by other things, and Brexit is a big issue that the media are interested in. climate change. People watch a film from David Attenborough, they watch something like, I'll mention it later on, Seaspiracy, and they get all angry about it, and then they continue about their lives. So it's a difficult situation that we're all finding ourselves in, but I think we need to go more local issues.
That's interesting, Paul. Thank you. And I think that's certainly the instruction from the electorate at the moment. Stuart, something that came up here was interesting because after people, that I was the cabinet support for economic regeneration, and after the election, a very, very prominent local businessman wrote and said that. He was sorry that I lost the election, but he said exactly what Graham Marsh has just said, that the lesson from industry is do not slag off the opposition, simply trumpet your own strengths. I had a little discussion with him because politics isn't advertising, it's a debate, and sort of, you can't just say, well, just make any damn promises you want and we'll see whose promises are the most sort of. Do you think that we damaged ourselves, Stuart, by trying to have a debate about what was possible, what was not, what the right principles were, what were wrong? Should we have just ignored the opposition and advertised ourselves?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because you instinctively want to engage politically with people, and it's tough to rise to the challenge and just set out who you are and what you're doing, and step back. That's hard, and it's very hard, especially when opposition candidates will list the world of what they're going to do, and position themselves as an alternative, whether it's realistic or not. It's very difficult with that. I think it comes down to a ward by ward position, how well each candidate can communicate on who they think they are and what they think they can do, rather than just reaming off what's best for that ward. I think it's deeply it's unfair if you were just to put down a load of promises and then just not deliver on the vast majority of them.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm trying to do things. Please forgive me. Stuart finished abruptly. I was listening to him. We are running out of time, believe it or not. The comments which are just coming up are absolutely unbelievably good this week. But I am going to move on. Implications, Laura. The Labour Party no longer controls County Durham. It no longer controls Newton, Great Aycliffe. We're going to have opposition, sort of either very powerful or, in Great Aycliffe's case, completely in control of the council. Implications. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think there's going to be some sort of coalition, isn't there? There's got to be. But in Durham County Council, I don't know if it's a bit sadistic, but I kind of want them to just, I think having the Tories and whoever, or just the Tories, in charge of what I think the Labour Council did really, really well, of trying to keep the cuts away from the people as much as possible. And we got dragged through the coals for all the cuts and everything we'd done terribly. I'm really excited to see how badly the Tories do, and how they show themselves up for being selfish. Now, unfortunately, I'm a bit worried that they'll somehow magically find more money, as Tories so often do. But if they have to use the same equipment and tools that our Labour Council did, then they will fail massively. And I hope people get a rude awakening and will not make this mistake again, because I think we talked recently on a show about just how well the Labour Council did. If was it Nottinghamshire was like 20 million in debt or something, and the Labour group up here, we weren't in debt. The council wasn't in debt because we really protected the finances as well as we possibly could. Yes, that makes really difficult decisions, but as far as possible, I think Durham County Council did a really good job. So I'm interested to see how this makeup will follow that on, if they'll make a disaster of it, as I believe they will and hope they don't. So yeah, there's a lot of implications.
The council to collapse, and that's the whole thing, and sort of money is indebted to try and prevent that happening. Very interesting to see how Labour will still run the show largely at County Hall. They're only 10 short of a majority, and they'll muddle through. I predict chaos at County Hall. In Great Aycliffe, sort of Labour will have to learn to oppose. It'll be very interesting to see how that opposition is perceived by people, whether it's perceived as just sort of being tit for tat, being nasty, or whether we manage to get it across that what we're doing is we are the opposition now. That's our job. It's our role to oppose and criticise and scrutinise. That's why we're there in what is a confrontational political system. Two very quick questions to finish off with. To you, Sam. First of all, Simon Hennick stood down.
Has he?
I thought he was a smashing chap with Simon. He was so calm and he guided County Durham through 10 years and $250 million a year income less. Sort of this man was very wise and clever and a great loss, whatever people say. And I realise he's been getting a bad press. But where do you see this going now? What do you see happening? And have you got any ins about sort of what's going to happen?
No, I don't really have any gossip. But what I would do is phone all the independents individually and just have a chat with them. What's important to them? What might they want? It's going to be a mixture. And again, from the outside, it all might not be what it seems. There will be people who agree to support the Labour Party, who have campaigned against the Labour Party for a very long time, who don't want to be seen publicly to support the Labour Party. So it might look like we're running a minority administration, and that might be what the story is, but there'll be agreements about who is getting what and why they're voting with us. I think we will succeed in managing to get a working group. The other thing you've got to remember is that there's a whole lot of Tory candidates who did not expect to win. And these people have jobs and responsibilities, and they may not even, live in the ward that they're supposed to represent. So how good is their attendance at meetings going to be? So there's loads, a real mix. You've got to be in the meeting to vote in the meeting. And like I said, I think the one thing that probably will unite a lot of independents and the Labour Party is not liking the Tories very much and not want them to get their own way. So.
What happened in the last council was that the opposition turned up quite well at the beginning of the 4 years. By the end of the 4 years, we had twice as many as them. And people were saying, oh, Labour's majority is only 6. Not in the meetings, it was double.
Exactly.
Because they can just not be asked to turn up. It'd be very interesting to see if the resolve continues. Stuart, Angela Rayner, sacked, crisis, given a bigger job. I'm going to ask you and Laura what you think about that. 2 minutes, remember, we've got to finish by 22.
It was possibly the worst choice by Keir Starmer, across the board, to kind of attach blame to Angela Rayner for the failures of what is a huge failure on the Labour Party's part. And it doesn't just get at people who were supporters of Angela Rayner. It gets to feminists, women, people who think that you shouldn't just instantly blame a woman when something goes wrong rather than taking some responsibility yourself. It was deeply damaging to the party to make that decision. No matter what went on, I'm not happy with it.
Laura?
Yeah, I thought it was laughable, quite honestly, given that 5-10 minutes before that announcement came out, he said, I take full responsibility, and by which I mean blaming everybody but myself. And he gets rid of some of the arguably most competent people, certainly people who've historically been on the left and people who've challenged him previously. I mean, if you look at the list of people who were sort of on his cabinet now, that they all, and I'm sick of using the terms left and right, but for ease, but two of them, they're all pretty much right wing and of the 1990s and want to take us back to neoliberalism. And I think that's where Key is going, and I don't think it's going to end well for him. I know they want rid of us all. They've made that blatantly clear. And she was an easy option. The fact she's a woman as well, he keeps getting rid of women. Like, that is not very good optics. It's really not. If you want to not look like a misogynist, don't get rid of all the women in your cabinet, for starters, especially ones that haven't done anything wrong. I didn't think she did in this instance anyway. Not that I'm here to, say how amazing Angela Rayner is. We have, there's obviously backstory there, but yeah, it was farcical. Is
How
the
to
word I'd use.
restate Angela Rayner's popularity? Catastrophe. Very, very interesting, the whole thing. Just before you go, Laura, I mean, the man's incompetent, isn't he? He's politically incompetent. Does he have to go?
I think you're absolutely right. He is politically incompetent. I suppose he's a decent lawyer, but he's a terrible politician. I think he's a puppet for whoever put him there. I know people wanted him there long before even Jeremy Corbyn got in. And bear in mind, he hasn't even been an MP for that long. So no, I mean, yeah, I don't want him as the leader. I did give him a chance because I hated it when people wanted rid of Jeremy Corbyn. I didn't think it was fair to just, you've got to support your leader, but you only get so many chances. And right now, he shouldn't be the leader. But we can't just leave it at that. There are proper, deep-rooted issues within the Labour Party now. And, people are saying you shouldn't be fighting within the party. We should be fighting the Tories. We absolutely should be fighting the Tories.
Were you not pleased that I felt that during this election, left and right in County Durham certainly came together and worked together for very, very accommodatingly. Did you not find that?
I mean, there was a lot more. There's a lot less fighting, and there's a lot more solidarity, I guess. But I think now that's done with. Everybody's still at each other's throats, I guess, and we're the ones who capitulate all the time. And
I'm so sorry, Laura. Yes, that's twice I've cut you off in mid sentence.
That's okay.
Please forgive me. We've run out of time on this issue. I've got a guest questioner waiting in the wings. Hopefully, is she there, Paul? Ready for?
Yeah, we're ready. Do you want me to play the unit?
No. I'm going to ask you one question before we go.
Okay.
What for you, Paul, is the way forward for the Labour Party in this? Is there hope? Or as one sixth former wrote to me, is that the end of it for Labour? Is Labour now dead in the water?
I was nearly thinking it was, but then, what we need to do is dig into our local communities, help. Labour Party should be there to help. That's it. Help people. That what's the point otherwise? We've got to have big ideas. We've got to have really positive ideas about how we're going to help. So at a local level, we help. And I don't mean doing stupid little picks. And I know other people have done little picks, but every politician seems to do a little pick now. Actually, that actually takes away a job from someone else. We should be, if we're doing a little pick, we should be saying, right, I don't want to take someone's job away from them here, but it needs to be done. This is awful. And it's a little bit like when Tories have been turning up at food banks and smiling for years. And, some Labour politicians have done it. Hey, here's a food bank. It's horrendous that there's a food bank there. And then we saw that voter in Hartlepool who said, Labour had no food banks here, and now the Tories have brought in 9. In Hartlepool, this is really good, as if the food banks are some sort of government thing. There are a lack of government investment. You know, this is appalling. We need to change the way people see things. We need to educate people, and I don't mean like telling them stuff. I mean listening and talking to them, and if you've got a better understanding of something than them, then have a nice conversation with them. If they've got a better understanding than you, then listen and like come to some sort of agreement. Talk to people like human beings. That's what it's all about. It's about, as Musa always says, dialogue. That's what's important. That's what we need to do. In order to do that, the members of the Labour Party need to be the eyes and ears of the leadership. They don't need to be suspended for trying to do their jobs. They don't need to be suspended for doing nothing wrong in order for a power grab within the Labour Party. You know, like, what's the point in being king of the ashes? Starmer, to me, seems like a leader who is not a leader at all. He's a manager, and he's a bad manager at that. He's trying to manage the party rather than lead. Just lead, and one of the things about leadership is letting other people lead with you. That's important.
Paul. That's it. God bless him. That's the last word on this. Unbelievable comments, people. Every one of those. I could have had a debate on that for an hour. Thank you so very much for your comments. Thank you for the team on sort of a very, very complex and some lovely insights there. But now we're going to move on to something I don't know very much about at all. And I think it's Mental Health Awareness Week. Next week, is it? It might be this week. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. Sort of Mia, we're going to invite Mia in, and she's going to ask a question. And let's
jingle, John, while I do the inviting. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. It's this week, Mental Health Awareness Week, and we've got Mia here. And Mia, ask your question. You know how this goes. Mia asks the question, the team give their opinions, but we give Mia the last word and says throughout where appropriate. This is a listener question. You can ask a listener question, just get in touch, but it's mental health awareness. Mia, ask your question.
Hey, do cliches like "don't worry about things you can't control" blame those whose mental health is affected by external circumstances and allow injustice and oppression to remain unchallenged?
Just an easy question, people. I remember Margaret Thatcher saying something very similar when she quoted that prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, sort of, don't worry about things you can't control, sort of just let them go, sort of, and does this allow those whose blame those whose mental health is affected by external circumstances, and thereby allow injustice and oppression to remain unchallenged? Stuart, what do you think about this?
I think it depends who's doing the saying. You know, if it's, a friend trying to be supportive, I think we have to realise that, most people aren't qualified mental health experts, are they? But when it's, somebody like your employer, or somebody in a power position who says this, then that's doors wide open for exploitation. When you see it all the time, with teachers and social workers, and it's filtered down into people, in the welfare system, where it's like you need to come up with coping mechanisms, or 80-hour week, just have a bubble bath, and I think it definitely depends on who's trying to make you feel better.
Talk to me more, Stuart, about whose mental health is affected by external circumstances. What do you see as the link between external circumstances and people's struggles with mental health issues?
Well, an easy one I think that lots of people can connect with right now is, extended work hours, where, people are contracted for 35, 40 hours, and there's people doing those jobs and they're doing 60 hours. And then you're getting the mental health advice on those situations, and it's like, just take a step back have a think about what you're doing. Just try not to worry about it. And the real reality of it is people are becoming really unwell because this help isn't in the slightest bit helpful, is it? It's complete nonsense for the most part, and it is a form of exploitation and kind of saying no, we don't want any responsibility for your mental health. It is some cliches, and go figure it out for yourself. That's where I think the exploitation can take place.
Laura, I'm beginning to struggle with this, and not in a bad way, but simply because I'm struggling to understand that. Is therefore this question saying that reform in society and in the way we do things is necessary to sort of deal with mental health issues? That sort of just going to the doctor, just seeing a therapist, these things in themselves are not sufficient, and that there are underlying causes of people's issues. Or Mia's so clever. She doesn't say everybody's, and we appreciate that, but she says some people sort of what they need is not therapy. They need a fairer, more equal, more supportive society. Is this the case?
I think absolutely it's the case. And you know, even to say just go to the doctors or just getting a therapy appointment won't help. Well, even getting those things would actually be a help, because at the minute our health system is so, you're on a 9-month waiting list just to go and talk to somebody about how awful you feel. So there's one change that could be made, a more robust system that is designed to help people. But certainly I think there are so many systems at play in our society. You know, we've talked about the patriarchy a lot, which is hugely damaging to mental health, both for men and women. Beauty standards, racism, homophobia, toxic masculinity. I could go on. There are many, many structural problems in our society that then lead to mental health problems. Not least what we're seeing at the minute, which is the work pressure. You know, we've got insecure work. You've got to be, you know, ready to go at a moment's notice because you might not get work that day. 0-hour contracts, which is insecure work, that adds worry. There are so many aspects, so many things wrong with our society. And so I do get, you know, the cliche, and yeah, a lot of people will flick through those pretty pictures with beautiful quotes on, and for some people that might make them feel better, just saying you can't control everything. Someone might just need to hear that, and that's lovely, but that can't be where we go for everybody. It absolutely can't. You know, we have such a huge array of mental health problems in this country that don't really get talked about. They're starting to get talked about now, which is absolutely wonderful. But they've had this sort of grubbiness about them that you weren't allowed to talk about. Oh, don't say that because people think you're mental. That sort of that narrative has kind of been going for far too long, and it's about time we just go, like Tim said, and yes, it's a cliche, but it's one that works. It's okay to not be okay. We are all struggling in different ways. Trust me, you'll see your friends with the perfect house and the perfect kids and the perfect dog and the perfect life on Instagram. That's not real. None of it's real. Everybody has an issue at some point, and we all need help in some way, shape, or form. Some more than others, and I think we just need to be a kinder society. We've seen these t-shirts, be kind, but people don't live it, because by being kind it means to understand what somebody else is going through, and the only way you do that is to listen to other people. So if we start there, start listening to people, listening to the concerns and worries, and also tackle a government that is simply not looking after its people, making them work too hard for too little. That was probably far more than 2 minutes. I could go on.
No, thank you so much, and such insight you showed there, Laura. It was lovely. Can I also say that the comments, some of them are deeply moving. I'm tearing up here a bit just reading some of them. It's one of the things people say, you know, are you upset to lose your role as a counsellor? And one of the things about it, Laura, was that people would write to you with problems that you were utterly unable to address. You did not have the powers to address. and I lay awake many nights worrying about those people's situations, unable to do a damn thing about it. And it's massively stressful being a counsellor if you're a caring person. Because and those are the things that don't show in the reporting the potholes and the dog dirt. That's the easy bit. It's when people write and say, you know, what do I do about this situation? Oh my God, some of the situations that people are in, and it's all, as you say, it's down to the what's happening to them in the world. Somebody, was it Cat Cray, said, you know, all the therapy in the world doesn't cure poverty, and that. So, Paul, I mean, I'm coming to you for this. What you're going to tell me is that the answer is that we sort of, to me as question, is we need socialism, not neoliberalism, surely.
Well, you know me so well, John. What I was actually going to say is one of the things about Blairism. I'll go into Blairism now, and I'll probably get hammered for doing this in Sedgefield CLP, because you know I rarely bring this up. But one of the worst things about Blairism, which is very linked to neoliberalism, was they took the worst aspects of capitalism and the worst aspects of communism and went, boom, let's do that. And the aspect of communism that they did was box checking. So they do this thing where they check boxes, and they're like, right, we've hit that target, that's great, we've got people employed all over the country on box checking. They don't do anything other than check whether other people have done stuff. The other people, like, you know, are under pressure from these box checkers. Now, the way this relates to mental health is people feel under pressure all the time. And then what we have is a situation where, you know, if someone's suffering with mental health problems or anything, like, rather than, to relate back to the original question, rather than just be understanding, which so many people have said that, and, like, you know, there's so many great comments in there about how to be understanding, and we all get this. Instead of being understanding, they'll say, well, tell you what, we'll send you on a mindfulness course. Go and be mindful for a bit. You know, you can lie down. I've been on a mindfulness course before where I was lying down in a school gym, thinking, I've got 300 papers to mark here. You know, I've got like all these exam papers to mark, and I'm lying down in a gym. You know, my problem was I didn't have enough time to do my work. It wasn't that I needed to be more mindful of the fact that I didn't know that I didn't have enough time to work. So a lot of the real pressures are ignored and added to in order to fix your mental health problems. And I think that is such an important thing that Mia's brought up. We tend to be papering over these issues rather than actually addressing the real core of the issue and what's causing it. And the first step is understanding, and the second step is don't put people under pressure over it. Don't put people under increased pressure in order to say that you've tried to help them, because they're not trying to help them, are they?
Thank you. Yes, a lot of people coming in and saying they agree with you. Michael Murphy says he had to listen to whale sounds.
Yeah.
One last question for Sam. Jake Ratcliffe, why, have you any ideas why the Northeast, why the suicide rate is so much higher in the Northeast, and what can be done about it? An easy question to finish us off on this topic, Sam, for you. Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously suffering from a chronic underinvestment that's happened over generations now. But his point about meaningful work is really, I think there's real mileage in that. You know, we have this narrative that people sit around not working and that they enjoy doing that. But I find if you look at people who don't work, it's extremely destructive to their mental and physical health. And if you look at the most recent experiment in people not working or not volunteering, i.e. the furlough, you know, very few people were really happy about sitting at home on furlough. Most people missed going to work, didn't want to be stuck at home, and wanted to be out in the community doing something positive. So I think, where you've got unemployment and structural inequalities that have happened over decades, then unfortunately that is going to come hand in hand with poor mental health. And unfortunately, there's just not as much out here to support people when they do struggle. By the way, there's been some excellent links dropped in the comments. Please do follow those pages and like them and save those resources. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much. Mia, you've been listening to what the team has to say. Have you agreed? Have you disagreed? Can you give us your thoughts on your own question, please?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the misconception seems to be that people seem to think that if you're struggling with mental health, it's a problem with you, as opposed to the environment. Like, for example, for me, a lot of my mental health issues have been the result of discrimination, like systemic oppression, whereas a lot of people like are suggesting that mainly my problem is being my attitude to the like, if you just thought more positive, like, how do you think more positively about negative experiences? And yeah, so I think there's this thinking that this happened. People will say, oh, this happened to me, and I was better when I just looked at it a different way.
For me, and I do that all the time. I'm so psyched for everybody I've said to. You're absolutely right. People do say that.
And I don't know if anyone's heard of a term called toxic positivity, but hearing that and Googling it or looking at it on YouTube, that really sort of helped me once I saw that actually this is a thing. But when I had a breakdown a few years ago because of just through like being discriminated against for years, I actually didn't contact mental health services because I feared they would make things worse. And I mean, when I lost my grandmother when I was 17, all they did really was put me on tablets. And it's like, actually, it's a natural reaction to struggle after something like that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mia, for asking the question. And thank you so much for your comments afterwards, which were really challenging to me. I shall learn the lesson of this. And if you're listening in, I think there's an awful lot being said which we need to take on board as a society, never mind individually. Thank you, Mia, for your listener guest question. And that, ladies and gentlemen, on what has to be surely the best ever Political Unmuted. The comments, the team, the listener guest question. Wow. Anyway, you know what's going to happen now. We're going to go make another cup of coffee and just take 5 minutes off, and we'll be all back afterwards. Our senior politician, Samantha Townsend, is going to take charge of the second half of the show. God bless you for listening. If you've got to go, thank you for listening to this first half. And as you know, what happens in the second half is we let our hair down a bit, and there may be the opportunity for one or two unguarded comments, which you can play back to us for many years to come. All right. God bless you. Thank you very much indeed. If you're going, see you in 5 minutes. If you're staying, bye-bye.
And get your questions in as well if you're staying as well. Get those questions in and we'll answer them. Yay.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say. And around here we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. For an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. Panorama we are. There'll be no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here today. I told my mother, now mother be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first. And I'm a real we are. There'll be no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here, no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. No passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. No passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here today.
Hello, it's me, the most senior councillor on the panel. Elected for 4 days. That was my favourite sort of social media moment for the day. Somebody said, "Oh, the Labour Party, you're taking people for granted." I've only been elected for 4 days. I haven't had a chance to take anybody for granted yet, and I do not intend to. People forget that, like, the Labour, if you're gonna be against something, it's really helpful to make it not sound like a human being, isn't it? You've got to other it. So the othering of the Labour Party is really useful. Humanising the Labour Party and reminding people that it's full of actual human beings is really useful, and I think should be something that we really build on now that social media is at our disposal, you know. So obviously very sad to lose John, and like, because I was really
Come back, I'm here. You haven't let me go.
I'm talking about County
I'm
Hull,
slightly
John.
late. There's no way to make a big deal of it.
I was planning on hanging on your coattails. God damn it. I'm going to have to find another mentor. They are.
I think this is probably the time to do our massive tributes to John. Like, what an amazing county councillor he's been. What a great person. Engaging with the community. There's questions in there like, could you have done any more? I think that freedom of information request that we put in as the Labour Party for to find out how much work had been done in your ward, and I don't know the exact statistics, but it was 400 and odd pieces for you, John, 2 for Paul Howell, and none for Scott Durham. And it's like, people, you know, like part of me thinks you won't do this, but part of me thinks people in that ward are going to have to learn that work will now not be done, or it might be done like, so someone like Michael Stead might do maybe part of it, but he's never going to take it to that degree. He's never going to be standing. And you didn't just do that. You did your climate change stuff. You did all your stuff on here. You really engaged with the community. So I'm not sure you could have done any more at all, because you were engaging. It's just one of those things where the massive media narrative took over the actual in-person narrative. And I do think as well, lockdown really worked against you, because, you know, you couldn't, you know, it looked like every politician wasn't out and about, but you would have been out and about as well as all the stuff you do online and everything. So I think that's had a negative personal thing for you on there. And I just want to pay a massive tribute to you. And it was that everyone who's been in contact with me has been talking about you and John Robinson as people who were badly missed. And John Robinson, what a kind man, and what an awful, like, he's had an awful time. So lots of love to John Robinson, who's just a lovely man. And, you know, if it was just down to what you and John and other people had done, you would have got in. And it's funny as well, it's like, it's not necessarily happening, is it? Like, you know, it's there's some Labour people who haven't done a fifth of what you've done who've got back in, and then there's Tories who've got in who've done not 1% of what you've done. It's such a shame, but you know,
we'll stop this and move on. I think, Sam. I mean, so the truth is that you can't believe in democracy and be upset when you lose an election. An election is, people can have the councillor they want. And the question is, could I have done any more? No, I bloody well could not have done anything more than I did. I worked 24, 365. When I went on holiday, I took my computer with me and I worked mornings on council stuff. And then when we went out in the afternoon, my wife, God bless her, who was listening on the iPad, she has been a council widow for 8 years. She's been neglected and well, I've run around after other people's problems. I've gone out proactively seeking problems. I've been contacted, because I've been so prominent, I've been contacted by people from all over the town, I've just done as much as a human being could. I know that there are people on here who think that I mistreated people. So all I'll say is find the evidence. When I did, I've called nobody stupid. I've called I did my very, very best. But that's irrelevant. It's an absolute irrelevance. if people don't want me, they needn't have me. And I'm happy with that because that's democracy. And what we've got now is that people have chosen the 3 candidates they want. And God, I do hope that they love the ward and that they do well for the ward and that they keep on top of the problems and move on. I am yesterday's man, very much so. And the waters close, Paul, the waters close over your head very, very quickly. I'm enjoying all these nice comments because, trust me, in another 4 or 5 days, and that'll be it.
You're a social media personality now anyway, John. That's it.
Life will move on, and I'll have a new identity and a new role to play. And the people who will be running the county are people like Samantha and yourself, because you will have to liaise with the county council, and then it's sort of over to you, out with the old, in with the new, and let's move on. This was connected to who's going to be the new leader of the Labour Party. I'm very anxious that it should be Carl Marshall. He has a real vision for where he wants to take this, and sort of, if he gets it, watch this space. And it's about where we're going, not where we've been and what had happened. God bless you all. Thank you for your lovely comments. It's been sort of really. And of course, I'm upset not to be able to go after the climate thing. But what happened. I'm at ease with it. That's democracy. And over to you, Sam. In every sense.
Yes, literally over to me. So yeah, it will all become clear in the next kind of couple of weeks. The Labour group is organising itself over the next couple of weeks for the first council meeting, which is kind of the end of the month. So it is going to be interesting. Jake says John Clare is now a social media influencer. 5 years, and then he's going to be on I'm a Celeb. Jake also said, yes, I just see you with your number on your back. Yes. Jake says, do you think they voted for a councillor or a party right now? So this is the interesting thing. I think there are lots of personalities in Aycliffe, and it's a different kettle of fish in Aycliffe altogether. But my election, the Conservatives actively tried to lose, right? They didn't do anything. They didn't put out a leaflet. They didn't set up a social media page. They didn't even announce themselves as candidates on the main Tory social media page. They did everything they could to lose, and they came within 46 votes of winning, and they ended up with a Conservative councillor on the town council by accident. So the only thing those councillors had, or those candidates had, was the party, because nobody knew anything about the candidates. So there obviously are a lot of people out there who are swayed by national issues, and who vote for the party, not the person. And I just think, we've all had this, haven't we? When you're talking to people on the doorstep, or you're talking to people in the school playground or on the street, and they really don't know that there's an election on, or what we are asking them to vote on. And is it the MP? Is it the councillor? What is a councillor? Is it town council, county council? What's this? And just, there's definitely something going wrong where people just don't even know what they're voting for, and for those people, they go in a voting booth and they do go off the pictures, because that's all they've got. They don't know these people. They've just found out 3 seconds ago when they got in the polling station that there was a police and crime commissioner. They have no idea what that does. But I'm just going to put a cross next to the Conservative box. It says "More police, safer streets." Sounds like a good thing to me. Paul, are you trying to come in?
I was just going to ask the question, actually. We haven't really addressed Hartlepool very much. And I wondered whether we think Hartlepool and the election there had a negative impact in County Durham as well, because obviously there was a lot of media attention on Hartlepool, and I don't think anyone could think that Labour's campaign there was good. I know the ground campaign was absolutely fantastic, by the way. I know it was, but they knocked every door. They did all sorts of different things. but they actually managed to lose. Like if you look at the number of people who voted, in 2017 it was 21,000, then it was down to 15,000 after everyone like went after Corbyn and the Brexit situation and everything, and then 8,000 and something people this time voted Labour. If Labour had got pulled the same amount of votes as last time, they would have won.
Yeah.
Now, do we think this was an absolutely disastrous campaign that they ran in Hartlepool, and has that had an impact? You know, like has this, whatever's been on the telly when you've got, oh, I've got a pint, look at me, oh, look at me, I'm having a pint with blokes. Did that really have a negative impact on us, and the fact that Boris Johnson was up locally and things, you know? That was what I was after.
Anybody want to answer that? Give their... Or should I go?
No.
I think I'm waiting for Stuart and Laura to comment here.
There's so much that is going on in Hartlepool. It wasn't just election for, you know, the voters on the doors. Before we even got to people being on the ballot, it was ruined for Labour, because if you can't convince a big chunk of Labour members that there is integrity and that there's democracy going on before you even get to the stage of knocking doors, then you've lost a lot of your core vote right there. If you can't get your most hardcore Labour supporters to back you at that point, where do you go?
They did all right in the council there as well, by the way. There were a few council wards that they took, which is worrying, isn't it, that they wouldn't do that?
I think the Labour vote just didn't come out, did it at all? I know a lot of people were really upset because there was no democracy in terms of choosing their candidate. They were just given somebody, and there were a lot of people I've spoken to who said they weren't happy about that. So that could have played a part, I think. Just people staying at home because they think, what's the point? It's not to do with us now. So
Everybody seems to be mentioning also that the sitting candidate left under a cloud. And sort of, you know, you elected somebody in good faith to represent you, and then he has to resign in humiliation because of his conduct. And then what they do is onto a Brexit voting ward, they impose a Remainer candidate, and in the meantime you have all this stuff coming through, an absolute wave. I think that we can't underestimate the impact of the support that the government has for the way it's handled the pandemic and for the rollout of the vaccine. And sort of, and up comes Boris, and then he promises levelling up. And sort of, and I think that you're absolutely right what you've been saying, people. The heart just went out of the Labour vote, and I think that the Jake Ratcliffe, I agree with you. The decision, what are we going to do? We're in trouble here. We'll bring back Mandelson.
dear me.
Dickhead. The killer thing we're going to do. We're going to really crown our election victory with this. And, oh, thank God's sake. And at this point, even I wouldn't have voted Labour. You know, utterly misunderstood.
But it just goes to show how backward they all are. Like our XMP this week has come out and gone, you know, we need to just forget about the past and move on. All right then, Phil, stop listening to things.
That's a
can
really
only
good
get
impression,
better.
by the way. That was so good.
Thanks, see. We're not the only one that do impressions in the house. But he's like bringing Mandy out and still wanting Blair to be leader and that. I mean, at least Jeremy Corbyn was the recent past. Bloody hell. Get over it. Move on.
He said we need to forget about the pits, right? Didn't he?
I thought it was a local fella and his dad worked down the pits. Wasn't that his whole shtick?
Okay, Phil, don't ever come to Gala.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Well, we need to look to the future. You know, D-Ream are the band of the future. Things can only get better. You know, that's
Minimum
where
wage.
we are.
Minimum wage.
Yeah, minimum wage and just avoiding that millennium bug.
Don't forget to mention Hitachi.
Honestly,
the people in the comments are loving John's little indiscretion there. We'll more of that now. He's not a pillar of the community.
Catherine's comments got me in stitches. Is he still chewing nettles?
It made me laugh because in one of the local political Facebook groups, somebody commented, like, where was Phil Wilson? It must be quite strange to people outside the Labour Party because you've got Helen Goodman actually standing for council, and you've got other people like Anna Turley, you know, at least she's still hanging around and being active in the community. And then Phil Wilson is nowhere. And it was like, where's he at? Where's he at? Oh, there he is. And he's in the newspaper because that, you know, that's where he is. He's not on the doorstep. He's not supporting his local constituency. He is in the newspaper.
Changing the subject slightly, Sam. Do you not feel sorry for Helen Goodman, who has, I think, she gets such a bad press as that woman, but the fact is she's stuck around loyally. She's drawn herself in. She's not sitting around making political statements like Phil Wilson. She's getting involved in the communities. She's committed to climate change and to explore. She's working with the DEI to try and explore mine water heating. She decides she's going to stand as a county councillor. She's lost an MP seat, but she's humble enough to go after a county council seat, and she didn't get in. I was upset to see that. I think that woman gets. I don't think she gets the credit she deserves. She has been doing exactly what you said ought to have been happening, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're not used to, again, it comes down to othering people. It comes down to othering politicians so that we can dislike them and not think of them as human beings. And we need to respect the fact that councillors and MPs and anybody that, you know, the General Secretary of the Labour Party, they're all human beings who are not perfect, and they're allowed a life after politics. They're allowed a life, and, you know, we're used to, again, because we're used to seeing MPs be the MP until they die, and then they retire or they die, and then we don't have to worry about what happens to them afterwards. But, you know, that's not the way it's shaping up anymore. We need to allow people to live their lives afterwards. So you have people denigrating Phil Wilson for disappearing, and then you had people denigrating Helen Goodman for hanging around and standing for a local community. And I'll tell you something about Helen. You know, she could have very well tried to take my seat. She could have very well presented herself at Shildon and tried to get in my seat, because it's one of the more safer seats in the constituency. But she didn't do that. She worked as a team, and she went for a seat that she knew there was a really good chance she wouldn't win, and she worked bloody hard. There was one point during the campaign where she single-handedly did 50% of all of the phone calls in the northern region of dialogue. Like, she is a machine. She talked to everyone in that ward, and it just wasn't enough at the end of the day. But I just think anybody, and I will say this about Conservatives, I'll say this about Independents and Lib Dems, anybody that has the courage to present themselves to the public in an election deserves respect. And that's one of the things that's going wrong with our democracy, is we don't treat people like human beings. We don't give people that basic respect, which is a shame, and we need to stop that.
It was interesting what you said about Phil Wilson. Like, you know, you're saying like he was criticised for disappearing and she was criticised for not going away. He did disappear in 2017, to be fair. So
yeah.
Do you want to know a little funny statistic? So I wasn't allowed to campaign in Sedgefield. I wasn't allowed to go door knocking in Sedgefield. One thing, because they wouldn't do it when it was dark and I only worked during daylight hours. The other thing, because I was advised not to, because Phil's team didn't want me there. Because I would have been talking about the NHS rather than Brexit, and I was profoundly in disagreement over Brexit with them. I was like, just don't talk about second referendums, just talk about the issues. So at the end of the campaign, we ran a report to see how many doors, how many contacts were made, and it was 1,500 during like the whole of the campaign, which is pretty low for anything. My personal count that year was 500, and I wasn't involved in the general election campaign. You know, that campaign, you know, they if they were trying to lose with what Tom Blenkinsop was saying to people on the doors, it's embarrassing. I'm not allowed to talk about this as chair of Sedgefield CLP because I get done for face crime. Do you know, like, have you read 1984? Apparently I do a smirk when people talk about this, so I'm not allowed to do it. I was told off by someone before for doing face crime. But yeah, that's... that is what it is. So Phil Wilson's campaign managed to do almost 3 times the amount of door knocking that I did. Terrible.
Anyway, which brings us to the exciting thing that we're not going to do for another 2 years, which is select our new parliamentary candidates. That'll be exciting, won't it? I'm really excited about that. I'm already excited about it. But I'm really frustrated that we've got to wait 2 years because we've got to wait for the Boundary Commission to finish. I think the Labour Party needs to change its mind on that.
When was that announced, Samantha? I've missed that. When did they decide that?
I don't think it's been announced. I think that's just stuff that, I keep asking people, when can we select our new MP? And they keep saying, well, it won't be till after the Boundary Commission's completed, which is in 2023.
Well, that's rubbish, because I was told after the elections.
Were you?
Mm-hmm. Somebody's kicking the ball down the road. They don't want us selecting our own, that's why. They've got loads lined up.
Well, that's the thing.
That's an interesting point as well, because one of the things that we think we won in Wingate over, and I'm sure this is the case for you, Samantha, Trimdon and Thornley, and I think we did this quite well across Sedgefield, actually. We selected the right candidates. We selected, as best we could, really good candidates. Parachuting in candidates is going to be a very bad idea. And look what Sam Lee did in Hartlepool. Really good vote for someone who's not attached to a party at all, because they were a local person, because they cared about the town, they were prominent in the town. And I think, we've had people I've had people in Wingate saying, we didn't vote for Labour, we voted for John Higgins. Now, that will always happen. There will always be a personal vote involved as well. But I think that's something that we need to understand, that people want someone who's from their community, who speaks for them, who speaks like them. Parachuted candidates should be a thing. I think they might win a few times in an area, but I think it leads to the destruction of the vote over time. When people think they are not interested in their own community, they're there to go to London. And I would hope people would realise this about Dehenna Davison, for example, whose residence, when she's on, I don't go on it, but on Tinder, I think she's on as living in London, because one of my friends came across her before. That's where she is based. She doesn't say herself based as in Bishop Auckland, and that's, maybe I don't know. I would think going to London should be the chore for an MP, not coming to your constituency. And I would like to see that for our county councillors as well, which we all do because we can't afford many houses.
Yeah. And what we have to